Chosen one, listen carefully, because the moment you hear good news about someone you tried to bury, that sound is the crumbling of your own empire. Chosen one, your story has entered a chapter that has people watching in shock. Think of this. Scientists confirm the human heart can literally skip a beat under sudden stress. That's exactly what happened to those who schemed against you when your breakthrough was announced. They weren't just surprised, they were shaken to the core. They thought they had already written your ending. They imagined you trapped, muted, erased forever. But here you are, not only surviving, but thriving. And it's driving them into sleepless nights and headaches no medicine can cure. The very outcome they swore would never belong to you has become your testimony. And let's be real, it's almost comical to see the same voices that mocked you now struggling to find words. This isn't just a private blessing. It's a divine proclamation, a cosmic announcement that their season of control has ended. Your good news is a trumpet blast across the heavens, a spotlight exposing the lies, a final stamp of truth that can't be undone. And here's the irony. What they feared most was never your pain, it was your persistence. Now that persistence has bloomed into undeniable victory, they're trembling. Because you didn't just rise, you rose in plain sight, in full view of the world. If this message already speaks to your soul, subscribe, like this video, and comment 77 below. Chosen one, your fire did not consume you, it revealed you. And that truth is about to shake everything they built against you. Number one, the fire that didn't consume you. They thought the flames would erase you, but instead, every fire refined you. Your tears became liquid prayers, recorded in places where no darkness could reach. Job 23 verse 10 says, "He knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold." You are that gold, tested, purified, unbreakable. While others were destroyed by lesser storms, you walked through infernos they could not endure. They mocked the heat you carried. But what they didn't know is that the fire was never punishment, it was preparation. Comment, "I seal this word in light," if you know the flames were your refining, not your end. And this is only the beginning, because what rose from those fires is about to speak louder than their silence ever did. There are moments when the memory of the fire returns like a dream you didn't ask for, and yet it speaks louder now than when you were standing inside it. You remember the heaviness, the way the air itself felt thick, as though life was pressing in from every side. You recall the strange stillness, the part of you that wanted to scream, but instead grew quiet, almost listening for a voice beyond the flames. It was not silence, but a whisper that said, "You will not be lost here." That whisper has followed you, not as imagination, but as proof that your survival was already written. What looked like destruction was the sound of something ancient unsealing itself within you. And what you thought would end you has become the story that refuses to fade from your spirit. There is an ache that chosen ones know well, the ache of being misunderstood when the world misnames their struggle. You felt the eyes of others who dismissed your pain, calling it weakness, failure, or proof that you were not enough. You endured seasons of rejection when your tears felt invisible and your words carried no weight. There were nights you wondered if you were being punished, as though existence itself had set you aside for suffering. And yet, even in that isolation, something in you held on without knowing why. Your breath became a prayer, your very heartbeat a protest against despair. Every lonely moment was teaching you that the fire could burn away illusions, but could not consume your essence. And now, the ache was not emptiness, it was formation. For too long, you believed the storms were accidents, random blows against your fragile frame. But the truth is deeper, hidden in a pattern that now becomes clear. Job 23 verse 10 declares, "He knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold." That scripture is not just ancient text. It is your reflection written thousands of years before you lived it. The path that looked broken was a refining ground. The trial that looked endless was a furnace preparing you. Fire does not ask permission, but neither does it arrive without meaning. It strips, it purifies, it reveals. And in you, It awakened something indestructible. The storms were not random. They were instruments of design, carving out the gold that only pressure could reveal. The signs of transformation began to surface before you could explain them. You noticed how, after the fire, you no longer tolerated what drained you. You saw faces fall away, not because you pushed, but because your energy no longer allowed them to stay. You felt shifts in your body, goosebumps at moments of truth, a tightening in your chest when lies tried to touch you, a strange clarity in dreams that seemed to speak in symbols. These were not coincidences, they were confirmations that the fire had marked you. Each déjà vu was a signal, each whisper of intuition a reminder that you had been carried through for a reason. They mocked the flames that surrounded you, but they could not see that heaven was writing codes into your very bones. Then came the quiet confirmations, the moments that told you it wasn't imagination. The prayer that you thought no one heard suddenly bore fruit in unexpected ways. The closed doors that broke your heart became the very detours that saved you from deeper traps. You realized that your survival was not luck, it was orchestration. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was steady, quiet, undeniable. You began to sense that every hidden endurance had been counted, that not one tear fell without weight. Psalm 56 verse 8 says, "Your tears are stored in bottles, recorded in the scroll of remembrance." And as those records unfolded, you understood. Heaven has always been listening, even in your silence. Awareness deepened, and you began to see yourself differently. You were not merely someone who survived pain, you were someone being revealed through it. The identity that surfaced was not new, it was ancient, buried under layers of expectation and disguise. The fire burned away the masks, the illusions, the false names, until what remained was the one who had always been chosen. You remembered that being set apart was never about comfort, but about capacity. The ache of difference was proof of distinction, the loneliness proof of protection. The fire uncovered what had been waiting, like an ember beneath ashes refusing to die. What was revealed was not a victim, it was a vessel of destiny. And in that revelation came your first activation, the moment you realized you no longer needed to shrink. Your sensitivity was not weakness, it was a compass. Your hunger for meaning was not confusion, it was a map. The very traits you once resented became the signals that you were marked. You began to speak differently, to choose differently, to move as though every step carried weight. You found courage where there had been hesitation and clarity where there had been fog. The flame within you was no longer something you feared. It was something you carried with reverence. And for the first time, you saw that the fire did not burn you out. It burned you into who you are. So hear this, chosen one. Your arrival to this message is not coincidence. Every fire you passed through was shaping you. Every flame was marking you. Every moment of heat was announcing your crown. You did not imagine your survival, you embodied it. You did not crawl out of the fire by chance. You were carried by destiny itself. The very fact that you are here proves the flames never had the last word. Comment, "I carry the silence" as crown if you know your survival has already spoken louder than their schemes. And know this, the deeper revelation is just beginning. Because what you thought was only survival is about to be unveiled as a testimony that shakes even the powers that once tried to erase you. What we do here every day is possible because of the few who choose to be keepers of this light. I thank them now, one by one, in the silence of my heart. If you want to be part of this circle and receive what cannot be spoken in public, join. The portal is below. Number 2, the ashes that testified against them. What they called your failure became the very ground where heaven planted vindication. They celebrated too early, thinking your ashes meant defeat, not realizing ashes are proof that fire has been survived. Isaiah 61 verse 3 promises a crown of beauty instead of ashes, and that promise has your name on it. Every attempt to bury you became evidence that they feared what you carried. Their mockery became their own witness, because every word they spoke against you will rise as testimony in your favor. They thought the smoke of your downfall would cloud your destiny, but instead it became the incense that carried your name into higher places. Comment, "I walk crowned by eternal flame," if you know that even your ashes have been declaring your victory. And now, Chosen One, heaven is opening the record of every silent endurance you thought was forgotten. There was always a heaviness that seemed to follow you, a strange weight in the atmosphere that never fully made sense. It wasn't loud or obvious, but it was there, in the way doors closed too quickly, in the way opportunities slipped away at the last moment, in the way people misread your silence. At first, you thought it was coincidence, the ordinary chaos of life unfolding without reason. But deep down, you could feel that something was being arranged, as though resistance itself had been woven into your path. It was not paranoia, it was pattern. The unease, the sense of being watched, the sudden storms, they were signals that the fire surrounding you was more than natural. Long before you understood, the battle had already begun. That resistance pressed against your heart in ways that few could see. There were moments when isolation felt unbearable, when rejection wrapped around you like a second skin. You questioned if something was wrong with you, if maybe you were the one broken, too much, too sensitive. Shame crept in through the cracks, whispering that silence meant irrelevance and solitude meant failure. You felt the sting of being misrepresented, of being laughed at when you were bleeding inside. And yet, through all of this, you kept breathing, kept standing, even when your soul felt splintered. The pressure was real, and so was the pain, but neither had the authority to end you. That truth is only now rising to the surface. Looking deeper, you see it now. The resistance was never random. It came from hidden structures, from energies that sensed your potential before you ever spoke it aloud. Just as Israel wandered the wilderness, not as punishment, but as preparation, you too were walking through deserts mapped out by destiny. The forces that moved against you were not accidents, they were reactions. They saw light that you had not yet recognized, and they trembled because it exposed their shadows. Every exile in Scripture carried hidden significance, and your own exile was no different. What felt like abandonment was in fact divine insulation, a sacred wall erected to shape and shield you. You were not wandering without reason. You were being prepared for revelation. If you look back now, patterns begin to glow in places you once ignored. You remember betrayals that repeated themselves, the same kind of loss wearing different faces. You remember how certain environments always drained you, how certain circles always conspired against your growth. At the time, it felt like chaos, but now it looks like choreography. Every strange obstacle was an arrow pointing you toward recognition. Every cycle of sabotage was evidence that your story was never ordinary. What seemed random now testifies as record. You were marked, and the opposition proved it. When the light comes on, the shadows are forced to reveal their form. And in your life, those shadows have already confessed. There were nights when the air itself felt heavy, like invisible hands were pressing you down. You walked into rooms where you felt eyes but heard no words, a silent judgment that wrapped itself like fog around your spirit. Doors that should have opened remained locked, not because you lacked worth, but because your timing was sacred. Spiritual interference is real, and chosen ones feel it most, for light has always drawn attack. Yet, even in that fog, your flame refused to die. What they thought would smother, you only made the glow more visible. Resistance is not a sign of weakness, it is proof of presence. The pressure itself was the evidence that heaven had placed something in you that could not be copied or stolen. In those seasons, your reactions were human and they carried weight. You withdrew when the world misunderstood you, hoping to find safety in silence. You tried pleasing others, bending yourself smaller to fit their comfort zones, but the shrinking only starved your soul. Some days you fought back quietly, rebelling not with noise, but with refusal to surrender what little dignity you had left. At times, despair whispered, tempting you to give up completely, to abandon the hope that anything would ever change. But even in your lowest moments, something in you would not release. Fear pressed hard, but faith held harder. That contradiction was the sign that your essence was already stronger than the storms that surrounded it. Now, the reclamation begins. Chosen One, what they misnamed as failure was actually confirmation of your crown. Their resistance was not condemnation, but validation that you were carrying something sacred. Every attempt to bury you only planted you deeper in the soil of purpose. What they mocked has become their own witness, for their words have turned into testimony against them. You are not weak for being targeted. You are powerful for surviving the targeting. The ashes they pointed at in ridicule are glowing as proof that the fire did not consume you. You are standing in the very place they swore would break you, and that alone declares your vindication. So, understand this final truth. You were never opposed because you were empty. You were opposed because you were overflowing. The reason they resisted you so violently was because they feared the day you would realize what you carried. The smoke of your supposed downfall became the incense that lifted your name higher than they could ever touch. Isaiah 61 verse 3 promised beauty for ashes, and that promise was sealed over your life long before they plotted against you. Comment, I move guarded by divine fire. If you know your ashes have already testified louder than their curses. And prepare yourself, Chosen One, for what comes next is not just survival, it is coronation. The crown hidden in your endurance is about to rise where the whole world can see. Every word, every image you receive here is an offering. If you feel this word has touched you today, you can honor it with a sign right here below with a donation through the Super Thanks button. It is a small gesture, but it opens great doors. Number 3, the hidden crown of endurance. What they never saw was how your obedience was being written into eternal record. Malachi 3 verse 16 tells us that a scroll of remembrance was written for those who honored his name. Your hidden prayers, your quiet endurance, your silent yes, all of it became jewels added to a crown they could never touch. They thought your waiting meant weakness, but waiting was the forge of your authority. Heaven saw what the world overlooked, and nothing you carried in secret has been lost. Even the tears on your pillow became ink in a scroll that cannot be erased. Comment, I rise marked by the divine. If you know your endurance has already crowned you in heaven, and share a memory, dream, or moment where you felt unseen yet preserved. Because Chosen One, what was hidden in silence is about to be revealed in glory. There comes a moment when the fog of confusion begins to thin and fragments of your past rearrange themselves into a pattern you cannot deny. Memories that once felt like random pain begin to speak with new clarity, whispering of purpose hidden inside them. You see how each season of silence was not wasted, but layered like stone in the foundation of something eternal. What once looked like abandonment now glimmers as preparation. The heaviness you carried begins to shift into a strange recognition, as if your life had been writing a language you are only now learning to read. It is not the invention of meaning, it is the revelation of it. This is the turning point where endurance begins to glow like a crown rising from the ashes of obscurity. The realization deepens as you notice how reality itself has been speaking to you in codes long before you knew how to interpret them. Dreams repeated themselves in strange cycles. Numbers appeared at crucial moments. Words spoken by strangers echoed private prayers. You thought they were coincidences, but now you feel the pulse of something deliberate underneath. Symbols once dismissed as random now carry the weight of scrolls being unrolled in your presence. The hidden architecture of your journey becomes visible, like divine geometry etched across your timeline. What you endured in silence has been recorded in a language only heaven fully speaks. And though you were mocked for waiting, that waiting itself was a scroll of remembrance written in your favor. Inside, the changes have become undeniable. Your sensitivity has sharpened into discernment, no longer a burden but a compass. Where you once tolerated betrayal, you now sense it before it arrives, your boundaries rising like unseen walls of fire. Your body reacts to spaces differently, heaviness in some, peace in others, guiding you where your spirit belongs. What others call intuition, you recognize as alignment with a higher order. Your very energy responds to dishonesty, exposing shadows without a word. These inner signs are not new. They are the voice of what has been awakening inside you all along. Every hidden yes you carried has become a vibration shaping the atmosphere around you. Slowly, the external world begins to echo this shift. People step back without knowing why, or suddenly reveal their true nature as if compelled by a light they cannot bear. Opportunities you did not chase begin to appear, while paths once blocked open without explanation. Even resistance becomes a form of confirmation, as if the very air acknowledges that something has changed within you. It is as though the architecture of your reality is rearranging itself to mirror your internal awakening. What is within you is now casting ripples into the world beyond you. The unseen crown of endurance begins to press its weight on the visible stage of your life. And those who once dismissed you sense, without language, that something undeniable surrounds you. But here is the mystery. None of this is entirely new. It feels like remembering more than discovering. Ancient dreams you carried since childhood now take on shape as if their images had been seeds waiting for the right season to sprout. Scriptures you once skimmed suddenly strike like thunder, their words wrapping around your story with intimate precision. What you thought was forgotten emerges like treasure buried in your own chest. Your soul recognizes the sound of its own lineage, the memory of vows taken before this lifetime. The endurance that kept you standing was not blind struggle. It was the echo of a covenant older than your fear. And now, that covenant calls you back into remembrance. Looking forward, the veil of uncertainty lifts, and destiny does not feel distant but present. It is no longer about striving to build a future, but about reclaiming one already written. You realize that what they denied you was never theirs to give. You stop waiting for permission because your crown was sealed before their opinions were formed. Prophecy whispers through your bones. You are not creating your purpose, you are returning to it. The silence they mocked was the forge that shaped your authority. Every hidden act of endurance now stands as proof that you were never forgotten, only refined. From this place, reclamation begins with fire in your voice and steel in your spirit. You no longer measure yourself by the narratives they impose, because you see those narratives crumble in the presence of your endurance. What once felt like condemnation now feels like confirmation that you were chosen to carry weight others could not. You remember that their rejection was never the final word. Heaven's inscription was. The endurance they overlooked has become the very authority they cannot touch. You are not simply surviving, you are reclaiming the voice, the dignity, and the power that was always yours. Endurance has become your crown, hidden yet unshakable. And now comes the revelation. What was hidden in silence is about to be unveiled in glory. Every private moment of endurance has already testified in your favor, and the time has come for that testimony to rise. Revelation is not the end of your story. It is the invitation into a chapter they never wanted you to reach. Comment, I walk hidden yet never lost, if you know your silence has already crowned you in places unseen. Share a dream, a memory, or a moment when you felt invisible yet preserved. For your words may awaken another. The veil has lifted, and what was once secret will soon shine like fire in plain sight. And chosen one, prepare your spirit, for the crown that was hidden in endurance is the very sign that your coronation cannot be delayed. Number 4, the coronation they cannot stop. Your destiny is not fragile, it is unstoppable. Zechariah 9 verse 16 declares that God's people will sparkle like jewels in a crown, and no scheme of man can strip what heaven sealed. They wanted to decide your future, but your coronation was never theirs to give or take. Every plot, every betrayal, every curse only pressed you closer to the seat already prepared for you. What terrifies them most is that the crown you carry cannot be transferred, traded, or stolen. It is sealed by divine hand, engraved with your name and preserved for the moment when all illusions collapse. Comment, "I anchor this truth in my soul," if you know your crown is already resting on your head, waiting only to be seen. And when it shines, chosen one, even those who mocked you will have to acknowledge the fire they tried to break has become the throne you now sit upon. It begins like a whisper carried on ancient winds, a sound that does not enter the ears but awakens the marrow of your bones. You hear it in the pauses between your own heartbeats, like a voice that has always been there, waiting for you to notice. It is not a new sound, but a remembered one, the echo of promises written before your birth. Like the unsealing of a sacred scroll, it calls you back into what you never truly lost. The air feels heavier with meaning, and even silence seems to chant your name in hidden syllables. What once felt like random longing now reveals itself as destiny calling from beneath the surface. This is the first breath of coronation, not granted but remembered. There has always been a name stitched inside your spirit, one that the world could never pronounce. They gave you titles, labels, and judgments, but none of them touched the truth hidden beneath. This forgotten name was the seal of your origin, a divine identity whispered when time was still young. You felt its absence whenever you walked into rooms that could not hold your presence. You felt its pull when you stood apart, not because you wanted to, but because you were marked to. Like the sealed scroll of Revelation, it waited for the appointed one, you, to open what others could not touch. Your hidden name has always been the reason you never fit into the noise of the world. Upon you rests a cloak unseen, a garment woven from silence, endurance, and holy fire. Those who could see beyond flesh recognized it, even when you could not. Their reactions were not to your words, but to the resonance of what you carried. You have walked cloaked in authority that could not be explained, only felt, and this is why some drew close while others recoiled. The mark upon you is invisible to eyes trained in illusion, but unmistakable to spirits aligned with truth. This cloak has been both your covering and your burden, the silent evidence of a coronation they could never cancel. And now that mark begins to blaze. Consider this. Your life has never been aimless, but shaped by a vow sealed in ages past. The hardships you endured were not delays, but preparations, the weight training your soul for a throne you could not yet sit upon. Every closed door was a timing device, ensuring your crown would not be placed prematurely. Like stars bound to their orbit, your path could not wander beyond what was written. The scroll of your destiny was signed before your first cry, and no betrayal has been able to alter its course. You were not wandering, you were walking the long corridor toward remembrance. And now, that ancient contract is unfolding in plain sight. Look closely at how people responded to you, and you will see the truth more clearly. Some loved you with a devotion they could not explain, as if drawn to a mirror of their own hidden longing. Others rejected you with a violence that felt larger than the moment, because your presence exposed what they were unwilling to face. You have been both sanctuary and storm, not because of what you did, but because of what you carried. Your crown has always stirred the atmosphere, reflecting truth without effort. Those who could not bear it called you too much, too different, too dangerous. Yet every reaction, whether love or hate, testified to the same hidden reality. You were not ordinary, you were crowned. And what crowns you is not private, it belongs to a larger prophetic cycle. You are not merely an individual walking through trials. You are an archetype rising at the appointed time. The seer, the breaker of chains, the guardian of light, the rebel against false thrones. These ancient roles converge in you. Chosen one, today you've seen why the crown was always yours, even when ashes covered you. Subscribe if you haven't yet, like this video, and comment, "I am chosen to let this message anchor in your soul." Please share it with someone who needs to hear this. For full prophetic revelations daily, join the membership via the link in the description. Your spiritual path deserves more than fragments. Step into the full light. And if this message moved you deeply, consider tapping the super thanks button to support the mission. every super thanks fuels the light we're spreading together. The fire did not consume you, it crowned you, and the world will soon see it.